Good evening to everyone. And thank you very much, Dr. Deepak George sir and other organizers for giving me a good platform, a wonderful platform to speak about microalgae. I exactly don't know the audience expertise and their field, but still I believe that there are people who have interest in really in research in aquaculture and fisheries. So definitely it will be useful for them to like what I just before starting, I just would like to tell that microalgae is research in microalgae is if you see it's a very vast area, and if you talk about aquaculture, microalgae in aquaculture, it's a very small portion of the total microalgal research happening in the world. So we'll be talking about the aquaculture or microalgae used in aquaculture and some a bit of science and as well as techniques for culture and as well as isolation. So here I'll be talking about the species which is used in aquaculture systems, especially as a live feed in different hatcheries and all, what will be used for them, and how it is judiciously used, or what kind of interventions are done with the nutrition of this microalgae, and as well as the culture, how it has been cultured and how it has been isolated from water bodies. But thing is that it's just I can say that just a brief of the things, and if you really want to know, or if you really want to learn this thing, you have to spend a lot of time on this. Exactly, you cannot finish in a talk or something like a practical class, but it's in a lifetime you can just spend your total life on microalgal research in aquaculture, because one life is also not you can do a lot of things, because if you consider the larval nutrition and all, microalgae is one of the most important components used in the all this kind of hatchery production. So I'm just starting my presentation. I hope this is changing. The slides are changing, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. Then if you consider any hatchery, actually I represent the Brackish-Water Aquaculture Institute in Chennai. So I'll be talking about algae or a species which is marine or brackish water in nature, and the species of microalgae which I'm talking is totally marine. My presentation will be in that line also. So when you see the hatchery production of different species, we have accomplished captive breeding and larval rearing of many species. But compared to the other countries like China and all, we have our basket is less actually. It's not many species we need to uh, do the captive breeding and larval rearing. One of the most important factor or critical factor I can say is nutrition, larval nutrition. So here comes when a larvae comes of fish, either it is a fish or a shellfish, you should have a specialized feed when the larvae comes first, because the larvae cannot be fed with a formulated feed in case of aquatic species, most of the aquatic species. What happens once the larvae is there, that larval digestive systems or digestive enzymes or whatever, it will be underdeveloped to take the formulated feed. The stage is known as a critical stage. So normally in presentation, I used to ask the question for students and other people. Like I'll just show this photo. So it's a beautiful photo of a salmon larvae. You can see the yolk sac. It's a very big yolk sac in the larvae, and the larvae will be using this yolk sac for an extended period, like 60 days or 90 days. And once the yolk sac is used, so by the time the larvae will be able to accept the formulated feed. So this is a case of the temperate, most of the temperate species, finfishes. And here you need not use a live feed actually. So once you come to the tropical species, just an example, I have put a cobia larvae, Rachis canarum. Here you can see the yolk sac or yolk content is less, and which will be exhausted in a day or a couple of days, a maximum of 3 days. It will be exhausted, and then the larvae will be in an underdeveloped condition. Their digestive system will not be in a developed stage, so they will not be able to take a food like formulated feed or something like that. So you need to give a specialized food with certain characteristics, which is known as live feed, and microalgae is one of the live feed in that. And you can see the different characteristics of the live feed. The live feed will be having a rich in essential nutrients, and they'll be having auto digestion characteristics, like they will be having digestive enzymes in that, and there are many other characters. You can read the slides also. And broadly we say it is a living capsule of nutrition, because every hatchery setup, or when you go for the breeding, you should have a live feed. You should have proper live feed to get your larvae. For getting survival, you should have a live feed in that. So if you see the live feed, there are different types of live feed, and microalgae is one among them. And I'll be talking about microalgae only. There are many other groups also, group of organisms as live feed. But microalgae has a unique importance in this. When we say microalgae can be directly fed to some larvae and can be used as an enrichment to different other live feeds. Say example, rotifers can be enriched with microalgae, Artemia naupliae can be enriched with microalgae, or copypods can be enriched with microalgae. So it is a starting point, microalgae. So here I just some pictorial. I can say that just like you can see the shrimp larval nutrition. The shrimp is the species or larvae which directly feeds on microalgae. Most of the shrimps the people use, I mean hatcheries are using diatoms, mostly diatoms like Skeletonema, Chaetoceros, or Thalassiosira, and some other algae like Tetraselmis is used for shrimp larval nutrition. The first feed of the shrimp larvae is algae. So in the second stage or advanced stage, the Artemia naupliae will be used. And this is the diagram showing the shrimp larval nutrition. And another place where the algae is used extensively is enrichment. Enrichment is just, I can say as an example, like suppose you are going to breed a finfish species or crab species, and where the larvae needs high amount of particular nutrient, say it is a DHA or something. Fish needs a lot of DHA. So what the fish first feed of the fish is rotifer. Definitely rotifer is not having any peculiar nutritional quality. Totally it is depending on the feed which is given to the rotifer. So that you can suppose if you want more DHA, you can use a algae with more DHA. For example, Isochrysas galbana is rich in DHA. So if you feed your rotifer or Artemia, I can say, with Isochrysas or some other species which is rich in DHA, definitely the rotifer will be rich in DHA, and the DHA can be fed to the larvae. This is what enrichment. It can be done for Artemia also. And in crab, mud crab, what we do here is a mud crab. Mud crab also, the first feed is rotifers. Again, you can enrich the rotifers with particular microalgae based on the requirement. And as a whole, if you see the nutritional composition, protein, we mostly broadly we say like protein or lipid, most important thing. There are different species with a different percentage of protein. There are species like more than 60% protein, like Arthrospira, Spirulina, which has more than 60% protein in it. And some species are rich in lipid. Certain species like Schizochytrium or Throstrochytids, they are rich in lipid. They have around more than 30% of their dry weight is lipid. And out of that lipid, about 50% is DHA, which is one of the highest in nature. There are like that different species are there. But the thing is that for a breeder or a person who deal with the larval nutrition, he should be aware of the species which has certain type of nutrition, so that he can manipulate the nutrition. You can use a different species to feed his larvae or rotifer or whatever. And one more important fact is like most of the larvae, they need PUFA, omega-3 PUFA, like I said, EPA and DHA. So EPA and DHA, if you know the which species is having high EPA and DHA, you can be used for the larval thing. And I just classified like different like finfish larval rearing. Mostly we use Chlorella, Nanochloropsis, and Isochrysas. Actually, it is based on different factors, and one factor is the size of the species. Chlorella, Nanochloropsis, and Isochrysas species size or cell size is like 5 micron or less than 5 micron. So that it can be fed to rotifers easily, because rotifer is it's just like based on the size they feed. And in shellfish larval rearing, you can see different diatoms like Chaetoceros, Skeletonema, Thalassiosira, and other species like Tetraselmis can be used, and other species like Navicula and Nichia is also used. And there are species with high content of nutrients. Like I said, Schizochytrium and Arthrospira, they're also used actually. But thing is that Schizochytrium is a heterotrophic algae, and the culture method and other things are slightly different from other autotrophic algae. So this is just I classified different species and their importance and purpose to use. Just wanted to say one thing, like if you see the shrimp industry or shrimp hatchery industry, long back they started using the species like Tetraselmis for feeding the shrimp larvae, and slowly they changed to Chaetoceros and Skeletonema as a combination. Scytoceros in the beginning, and in the later stage Skeletonema, and the later stage they totally shifted to a single algae, that is Thalassiosira. Now I can say most of the hatcheries in India, they are totally depending upon Thalassiosira. There are different factors why they are using. I'll be coming to that point later. And each species has its own characteristics or positives and negatives. So definitely the industry will always go with the easy one or easy to culture, or having some sort of antibacterial or some properties like that. So there are different species with different characters. So just for selecting an algae, if you go for selecting an algae for culture or any other aquaculture purpose, there are certain factors should be in mind. First is the easiness of culture. The species should be cultured easily. Thing is that if you have a species which high nutritional quality and which is not easy to culture, and there is no point in taking that algae. I mean, that strain to culture. So the second one is the growth potential. It should be fast growing. A slow growing thing you cannot include in an industrial thing or a commercial setup. Again, the size of the cell matters, because based on your use, if you're using for rotifer feeding, definitely the size matters. And if you're using for shrimp larval nutrition also, again the size matters based on the mouth size of the larvae. And nutrition quality is one of the important points in that. Here also you have to know the requirement of the larvae. That is actually poorly understood, because many, if you read the papers and all, larvae, the requirement of nutrition in larvae is poorly understood and poorly studied, and still many research has to be done in that line. And another point is the easiness in harvesting. Actually, it's a big area. I may not be able to cover that here. Harvesting is again a big question in most of the aquaculture thing, based on the size and other things. And outdoor culture performance will be different from the indoor culture. That culturists should understand that which species will perform better in outdoor culture, because most of the breeding setup will be totally depending upon the outdoor algal cultures. And media also, it should be growing in a comparatively easy media. There are different media. There are general medias, are there specific medias are there. That is also an important point in that. And I'll be just talking about the different terminologies used in culture. Mostly they say indoor culture. This all self-explanatory. But I can say that some axenic culture and xenic culture. It's like axenic is without any contamination, but still it can be debated, because what I feel, in all classical books you can see the culture should be axenic and all, but definitely in many cultures, if you see the bacterial population, many bacteria are symbiotic with some algae. So axenic is again a question mark. And batch culture, these are different type of cultures. Batch culture is like if you culture for certain days, and if you're harvesting and removing that will be a batch by batch you will be culturing. And continuous culture is just like more of an industrial type. And there are two types, turbidostat and chemostat. Turbidostat, where the number of cells will be, or turbidity will be kept constant, and chemostat, where the chemical concentration or nutrients will be kept constant. And semi-continuous is like you will be harvesting certain portion of the culture and you will be adding fresh media in that. And it's a very important thing, that growth cycle or a growth curve. It's a classical growth curve of an algae. Any algal culturist should know that growth curve of each species, because it is very important in point of nutritional thing requirement. Most of the algae grow like lag phase will be there, and a log phase will be there. Again, a stationary phase will be there. In stationary phase, you'll have a number of cells will be there constant. You'll be getting your biomass pretty good. But thing is that once the culture reach the stationary phase, your nutritional quality will definitely come down. So you should harvest before reaching stationary phase. So it's important to know the growth curve of each species, and it differs from species to species. So it is a prerequisite actually. Once you go for culture, you should understand the growth cycle. It can be studied easily in a laboratory condition based on the number of cells. And there are other requirements like media, nutrients, light also. Obviously, in an indoor culture setup, you should have a certain lux. We calculate in lux, like number of tube lights and all. And temperature definitely we keep in Indian situation, it is like 24 degrees Celsius plus or minus 1 with aeration. And these are the different setups. You can start your culture from test tubes, and again to 1 liter flask and 2 liter flask, and it can go up to like 80 liter or 20 liter carboys in an indoor setup. Again, it will go to the outdoor setup, and it can go to the big tanks or raceways based on the species also. Raceways mostly used for spirulina and all. You can see in the picture, it's a spirulina raceway. And these are the different media which is used commonly. One is Willard's FY2 media, and another media is the Wellness media. And there are many other media also. These are general media. It can be used for many species with the small addition. Just like for diatoms, we need to use a silicate along with FY2 media. Valna is also same thing. Most of the nutrients are common in both the media. And for culturing or starting your research, or you should have a microscope to check your contamination, check the cell size, and check your routine sampling. Or when you're subculturing, you have to check the quality of your algal cells and all. So you can have a different culture size also. You can see the 100 ml flask, and it can go to the 20 liter carboys, and again to the intermediate culture rooms, and again to the outdoor culture. And this is our setup actually. We have a isolation chamber as well as a development center. So we do isolate different species from the saline ecosystems, and we are culturing it. We are testing for nutritional quality as well as growth parameters, and we'll be using for the different larval layering also. And I'll be talking about isolation. You can just see it's a graphical representation. It's clear from that why we need isolation. That is the question actually. Isolation, I can just tell in two sides. One is you may have a unknown species which is not studied, which is not identified. You can have a very new species, novel strain with the different characters. That is one point, one side. Another side, like suppose you have a species like Nanochloropsis you have, and you have been culturing Nanochloropsis for the last 1 or 2 years. So thing is that the quality or the growth vigor of your species or strain will come down over the years, over the months also, I can say, because you will be using the same media, and slowly the growth vigor or protein content or lipid content may come down. The best thing is that you should better to take a new strain. The same species, you can try another isolate. So isolation has its own important in different ways. And there are different techniques used for isolation, mostly 3 techniques what we use for isolation. That is, one is like serial dilution. Here you can see that serial dilution. It's all microbiology techniques can be done very easily. And serial dilution, and followed by agar streak plating, and can be isolated through these 2 techniques. And one more technique is that is micro manipulation, which is mostly used for the bigger cells like spirulina, or you can use for Dunaniella. Certain cells which has a size more than 10 micron or 20 micron can be used for this technique like micro manipulation. I'll come to that. And selecting a site, actually it's our own study which 3 years back we have conducted. We're doing some sort of diversity study and isolation study. So you can use a professional phytoplankton net to filter the water. You can have a 10 micron mesh size net, and you can filter a non-volume of water, and you can just take that to the different techniques like serial dilution, agar plating, and micro manipulation. So serial dilution is just like microbiology technique. You can use different test tubes with 9 ml of media. Media, what I'm telling is a seawater media actually. Seawater plus the stock solution, media stock solution will be added in that. And in that 9 ml, you'll be adding 1 ml of the sample. and that will be 10 to the power minus 1. Again, you will shift to another one. You can go up to 10 to the power minus 10. Here, the advantage is that you will be diluting 10 times every time, and you'll be keeping in an indoor condition, maybe a week or 2 weeks. So the chance of getting single algae is there. You may get a single algae in a 10 to the power minus 10. You may not get, but thing is that you will develop some sort of culture or some sort of growth in that after 2 weeks. So you can just go to the next stage for that. That is agar stick plating. The same tubes can be used for plating. Agar stick plating, normally we take 1 to 1.5% of agar, bacteriological agar we are taking, and we can make the plates, and you can just streak the test tubes from the test tubes which you kept for 1 or 2 weeks, and you can see the growth also. Every time you can see the cells, what all the cells are there in the microscope, and once you understand that there are some 2 or 3 cells are there, you can go for the streaking. And streaking, just one picture is there. You can see how it has been done. The purpose is nothing like, while streaking, every algae has, just like a bacteria, algae has a property that they'll be forming a colony. Most of the algae, they form colony, but not all the algae. So this colony forming characteristics we are utilizing here. So they'll be forming different colonies. So once you streak, you may get different colonies based on the color, based on the texture, or based on the features. You can differentiate the colonies, and next to streaking, you can just take single colony. Again, you can streak. Normally the streaking will be for 3 times or 5 times. You can continue again and again. Maybe in the 5th time, you'll be having a single species in that. You can, every time you can check that. You can just take a loop of one colony. You can take using a loop, and you can see the species, or in a microscope you can see whether any contamination is there or not. And once you get a single thing, you can go for the culture in 100 ml flask. And the third method is micro manipulation. I've just taken this from a book, Microalgal Culture Techniques. There they used Pasteur pipette. You can use micro pipette also with a micro. So you should have an inverted microscope for that. And this is all for counting the number of cells and all. And you can see the setup, culture setup, and you can use this racks, wooden racks, to keep your things, your plates here, and other slants also. You can see the slants also. Plates can be used or slants can be used. And these are the colonies. I was telling that they will form the single colonies, and you can take the colony and you can restreak it, and you can take this colony to the 100 ml culture. You can mix it, and slowly it will grow in a stock culture. Then again, you can shift to the 1 liter flask. Again, it's all a process actually. The process come from a small test tube to a plate, again 100 ml flask, again maybe a 250 ml flask, and 1 liter flask, 5 liter flask, and it go to the outdoor culture also. And these are some of the species which we isolated. You can see the spirulina. Number 1 is a spirulina. Second is skeletonema, and third is a navicula, and 6th one is it's a Thalassosera, and 5th and 4th are same. It's a Dunaliella salina. And in the outdoor culture, the media is slightly different. We use cost-effective or fertilizers, ammonium sulfate, urea, and single superphosphate, plus silicate for diatom. And mostly the inoculum, we say as a thumb rule, it's 10% of the total culture volume. It differs actually. If your inoculum is very rich, or the number of cells are very high in that, you need not take a 10% of that. You can use a lesser than that also. But normally we say it's a 10% of the total volume. So the nutrient profiling, it's all around study actually. Based on the nutrient profiling, you can use different algae for the different larvae. And it's all what we understood. We have isolated a Nanochloropsis which has a 25% EPA in that, and Isochrysis with 7% DHA in that. And one more thing, we studied different larval nutrition studies. In that, what we understood that when you use a single species, your survival, you'll get a better survival when you use a mixed algae. That is what in different species we have repeated the experiment in finfish and shellfish, and we got better result in using a number of species. Like if you use 4 species together, a mixed algae, definitely a mixed algae is giving a better result. But obviously there are challenges in that, because keeping so many algae will be, it needs a kind of expertise and facilities. So as a conclusion, I would like to tell that the microalgal isolation and strain development, as far as the Indian globally, if you say also, it's all under explored area of research. We can have a lot of, just an example I would like to tell that there are millions of algal species in nature. In that millions, only thousands are known or identified. In the thousands, in if you see the aquaculture, we can just count number of species which is used in mass culture. We can count in your fingers, that not much less. The reason may be different, these are maybe the different factors of that, but still there are a lot to understand, lot to study in that, because it's a huge area. And nutritional intervention also, there are many, like if you in the beginning I have said that China is having a lot of species in their basket. We are not having that many species, because this may be a hindering factor, that we should have a proper live feed, because most of the breeding program fails without a proper live feed. That is also an area of research. And another very important thing is about harvesting. I was telling concentrated products. If you have a concentrated product of microalgae, that is the best thing hatchery person can be used. So if you produce a concentrated nanochloropsis paste, obviously what I see in India, most of the pastes are imported from different countries. We don't have our own. I mean, some institutes are doing some research on that, but still we are not in the right path. And I can say that there are many people in India doing research in microalgae, but actually we have to put our hands together, those who are working microalgae. Because when I started my thing about 5 or 6 years back, I was getting some input or training from CMFRI, and we have started in that. But if you see the algal repositories, especially for aquaculture in India, it's lacking actually. If you see the world repositories like CCAP, CCAP is a culture collection of algae and protozoa in UK, which is one of the biggest culture collections in the world. They have thousands of strains, and they are selling all over the world also. But in India, you can see there are very less. Like NFMC is there in Bharathidasan University, National Facility for Marine Cyanobacteria, and recently they have started algae also. And CMFRI has some sort of thing, and we have also started some sort of repository, because a repository is a place you can have a lot of species and new species, and a lot of researchers will be benefited out of that. And another future thing is transgenic microalgae. We can dream of that also, because a species like chlorella. Chlorella is a easily culturable microalgae. Suppose a chlorella is having a high lipid content like a schizochytrium, which has a 50% or 30% of lipid or very high DHA. If we have a chlorella with a lot of DHA in that, that will solve many of our issues. So that can be a future in that. Still works up. We can read some papers on transgenics also. And if you see the books, I can just tell that these are the very good books. You can just read on that. And Algal Culture Techniques is one of the best book in that, by Anderson. And there are many other books. If you really want, you can just message me. I can get this soft copy of this. But thing is that we mostly keep the soft copy and we won't read later. Thing is that these it's based on your interest. Like if you're interested in algal culture technique, definitely go for the Anderson's book. And if you want an overall picture of live feed, you can read a live feed in marine. That is also another good book. So this is the total thing. I hope I have kept the time.